Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So my name is Tracy Greer. I'm the head of marketing for Mando. For those that don't know, we're a digital agency committed to simplifying digital experiences for everyone. So we work with regulated industries like utilities and financial services, focusing on helping your customers to do the things that they don't really want to do. So nobody wakes up on a Saturday morning wanting to pay a water bill or gets excited about submitting an insurance claim. So we make those experiences easier for your customers, giving them time back to do more exciting things with their day. So we're really excited to welcome everybody. This is the first in our new What If interview series. And some of you will know that we started out at the beginning of lockdown and we were hosting some knowledge sharing calls around how businesses have been responding to the pandemic and the challenges that they saw ahead. On the back of these calls, we launched this new webinar series. So every fortnight, we'll be having an informal chat with somebody who we feel can share some really useful learnings and experience for everyone, focusing on our key theme of making digital simple for everyone. So that includes looking at themes like customer experience, digital transformation, and vulnerable customers. So today we welcome our guest, Helen Pettifer, who's a specialist in helping clients to better serve their vulnerable customers. So I'm just going to kick off. I'll introduce Helen in a second and she can explain what she does. But we'll just kick off with the statistics. So a 2017 survey found that up to 50% of UK adults show characteristics of potential vulnerability. And with COVID-19, as you can well imagine, this number has increased hugely. So there's people facing financial difficulties, bereavement, mental health issues, isolation, and many others. And so the challenges in serving these groups of customers with exceptional customer experience has benefits for all customer groups. So just to let everyone know, just a bit of logistical information. I've also got my Mando colleague Sarah on with us too, and Sarah will be helping with the logistics and monitoring the chat. So if you've got any questions or comments as we go through the interview, please just pop them in the chat window there and Sarah will pick them up and then we can go through some questions at the end. We'll be chatting for around 20 minutes with Helen and then we'll move on to some questions and comments. And we are also recording this interview so we can then send it to you afterwards so you can listen again on demand or you can share it with your colleagues. Right, so first of all, I'll introduce Helen. So Helen, if you can just kind of let everybody know a bit more about what you do, kind of how you've gotten involved with the vulnerable customer area that you work with, and maybe just touch on a bit of your personal experience as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for inviting me to be your very first guest. It's exciting, isn't it? So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I came out of the corporate world probably about 4 years ago now, just under 4 years ago. I was a customer service manager for a call centre environment in the security industry. And we relocated from Kent to Buckinghamshire. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to set up on my own. Have a real passion for people, for communication, for customer service. So I set up Helen Pettifer Training predominantly as a customer service training and consultancy organisation. And the vulnerability seed was planted, I think it was about February 2018. I was approached by a town council member who was asking if I offered dementia training for retailers. So I didn't, so I went away and sort of did a little bit of research and identified that there was a gap in the market for sort of businesses having that vulnerability training. So I then promptly booked myself onto dementia training and started sort of putting together some courses, did a lot of research, a lot of training around all the different types of vulnerability. Still not knowing at that point what a big regulatory issue it was as well, and sort of compliance issue for businesses. So as my research developed, I really sort of found out a lot more about it, and then that's really become my passion. That's really what I focus on now. And you mentioned again my personal story. So yeah, I've got my son Daniel. He's 22 now. He's He's got learning disabilities. He's got chromosomal translocations. It means that 2 of his chromosomes are sort of a little bit skew with, but he's had some challenging times throughout his life. And so just sort of learning how to communicate with him, how to help him adapt in society and learn the basic life skills has been challenging. It's been fun. It's been, you know, times where I've sat on the kitchen floor and cried. But it's sort of all helped to sort of shape exactly all the, you know, everything that I'm bringing now to organisations. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, Tracy.
That's great. I mean, it's great that you've got that personal experience as well. You can really add that extra dimension to, you know, those things that you're training others to do.
Yes.
So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're just going to start out by obviously looking at the previous few months. Obviously the situation around COVID has changed rapidly. So when we started these calls at the start of lockdown, we were talking about things which were slightly different to what they are now, and maybe seem a bit naive compared to where we are now in this situation. And obviously the narrative is very much changing, you know, to look forward and how we're all going to come out of this and the things that we can do to better support our customers going forward. So just looking back, you know, with the vast range of clients that you work with, and, you know, those that you've been continuing to work with over the last few months during lockdown, and across your own facilitated discussion calls that you've been running during the pandemic, what have you seen as been the key issues, you know, the common themes for companies kind of within each different sector, and then those that are kind of quite broad across all industries?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, sort of obviously right back at the beginning, we sort of almost had lockdown happen almost overnight. So a lot of organisations that have the logistics, the operational issues of sort of getting the staff set up working from home while still carrying on having those customer conversations, and obviously then dealing with a lot of emotional sort of feelings and sort of effects from the customers, and actually sort of a lot of fear from both sides, really, from the staff and from the customers. And so that was a big firefighting issue right at the very beginning. And it was then obviously making a priority of connecting with the vulnerable customers that they already knew about. So actually sort of making sure that they had the support that they needed, that they knew which telephone line to call on if they had any issues, making sure that they were fully supported. But also as well, I think it was a real challenge for them to actually identify the customers who were vulnerable, but they hadn't yet been identified or presented themselves as vulnerable. So a lot of organisations, especially heavily regulated organisations, so the utility, the financial organisations, have predominantly dedicated vulnerability lines, bereavement lines. And then of course the saying, the message on that was only contact us if you are considered vulnerable.
Exactly, yeah.
So actually it was kind of like a barrier to people who were potentially vulnerable actually getting in touch with that organisation and may not be identified as vulnerable. So a lot of people thought, well, I'm not over 65, but actually I'm still having trouble with my finances. I'm still having trouble getting a prepayment meter payment sort of set up. So it's sort of identifying those customers that are vulnerable, but yet hadn't yet presented or been identified to that organisation as vulnerable. So that was a big issue as well. And it was a case of maintaining those communication channels. So it's making sure the phone lines are still operational, people can still get through, trying to reduce the time that the customers were waiting to get through. I know that there was histories of sort of people waiting 7, 8, 9 hours on a call line to get through to speak to somebody. So there were some real big challenges. And then of course you've got the digital challenges, actually, is trying to get the people who may not be digitally tech savvy to then all of a sudden get them with online banking, get them with online shopping, getting them sort of communicating with the organisations digitally, you know, through web chat, all of those. So some real big issues there. And obviously I touched on the prepayment meter. So from the utilities point of view, it's making sure that actually people can access the way to top up their prepayment meters. And you know, obviously shops closed, people were self-isolating and shielding, so they couldn't get out to top it up. There was that fear of, actually, I'm not going to have gas, I'm not going to have electricity, I'm not going to have all the things that I need to keep me safe when I'm at home. So yeah, so some real sort of issues, and obviously there's been that big correlation between finance and mental health. There's always been that sort of correlation and interlinking between the two, but I think that's really, really been impactful over the last sort of 3 months, really, I guess 2-3 months, and how people who have been furloughed or maybe have lost their job, or even just the self-employed. I'm a small business owner. You know, that brings challenges of its own. That additional stress is actually, you know, people who, what do I do with my employees? We're just a small team. How am I going to keep my premises going? How am I going to get the bills paid? All of those additional challenges then does weigh on people's mind, and affects their sleeping, affects their mental health. So we've seen some real challenges sort of in the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, two things I think which stood out there for me. You talked around those people. Obviously, a lot of businesses only were accepting queries, like British Gas were only accepting queries for those that were vulnerable. And it's the difficulty, isn't it, of those people identifying themselves as vulnerable. I think there's a massive challenge, isn't there, just outside of this crazy time. There's a massive challenge with people self-identifying as vulnerable. They don't appreciate that they are. And I think that's definitely been very difficult, hasn't it? So people don't realise they might have lost their job, but they don't realise that they're, you know, would technically be classed as a vulnerable customer, therefore can receive extra support at this time.
Yes.
So
and I think as well you get the cheeky customers as well that actually think they may not be sort of completely vulnerable, but they think, well, actually, if I then identify myself as vulnerable, I may get a better level of service. So it's kind of putting the onus onto the members of staff who are taking those calls to really sort of dig deep and sort of actually really identify, you know, sort of what the vulnerabilities are and what that support is needed. So there's some cheeky people out there.
As there always are. But have you seen, sorry, the other thing I was going to say stood out for me as well is just about, you mentioned about temporary vulnerability, and obviously that's been a big factor as well, hasn't it, over the last few months, you know, with people that weren't vulnerable before but are very much vulnerable for a very short period of time. They may have lost their job or in financial hardship for a short period of time, and then coming out of that vulnerable group again. And obviously that's very difficult, I would imagine, for a lot of businesses to manage. So you've got the self-identification, but then you've also got the, you know, the kind of managing that vulnerable customer list, as it were, the PSR. Very challenging. Have you seen any examples that you thought were really good where companies have tried to help people to identify as vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, some of the conversations I'm having, they are now sort of really helping their staff to pick up on keywords and phrases. I think at this stage it is helping the staff to identify sort of the conversations that they're having, and it's not just the verbal conversations, it's actually in the written conversations as well. Sort of pick out key words. In my training I talk a lot about the word now, and actually when a customer is using the word now, it signifies that something has changed. So if they're sort of saying, I can't pay this bill now, so it may be that actually I could pay it in the past, but actually now my situation, my circumstances have changed, and that's caused me some you know, sort of some barrier or some challenges or some crisis or something. So in my training I really do encourage people to really listen out for that word now, and listen out for the emotions and the tone of voice in that customer as well. So because I think tone of voice obviously comes into it a lot, doesn't it? But that's a really poignant word, isn't it? Now you don't really appreciate that until you've explained it there. Very poignant word to look out for in conversations. Definitely. Great. So what we'll do is we'll move on to kind of looking at the future, kind of, you know, how a lot of companies are looking to come out of this, how they're looking to improve their customer experience, their customer service for vulnerable customers and for everyone. So as I mentioned, a lot of the narrative around COVID now seems to be looking ahead. How are we going to not just survive this pandemic, but how are we going to thrive? How are we going to help our customers to thrive over the next few months? So
how do you think the face of vulnerability is going to change over the next 3 to 6 months?
I think the two biggest vulnerabilities that we're really seeing now, and I think will continue to be seen, is the financial challenges and the mental health challenges. And as I said, they're very much interlinked and entwined.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're starting to ease out of lockdown. So we're almost at the end of that 3-month holiday period where people have had payment holidays. That's what I meant with holiday period. So a lot of people went on to the payment holidays. It'd be interesting to see what happens with those. And I think sort of as they start to come out, it'd be interesting to see how the organisation really communicated to the customer right at the beginning the actual payment holiday terms.
Yeah.
Was the customer in the right mental clarity position to actually really acknowledge and take on board all of the implications sort of 3 months down the line? And I think some organisations are now offering a further 3 months, which I think should be taken with caution, because I think actually you're just either prolonging the inevitable or making things worse for that customer. But that's probably another topic for another conversation. So it's, it's helping the customer to understand, how that company wants their money back. Are they going to want a lump sum at the end of the 3 months? Are they going to be increasing the monthly fees? They're obviously going to have to pay the interest back as well. So it's sort of identifying how that customer fully acknowledges how that money is due back. And if they've taken out more than one payment holiday, then everyone's going to be knocking on their door wanting their money. So it's going to be quite challenging for a number of people, especially if they're still furloughed or maybe even gone into redundancy. A lot of organisations are now making people redundant. So it may be that their financial situation hasn't improved, it's actually maybe got worse.
Yeah.
And then, of course, organisations are knocking on the door.
Exactly, yeah. Do you think that we've actually, do you think we've just moved the problem down the road a little bit then?
Yes.
With regards to financial hardship?
I do think so. And I think that maybe customers were thinking, okay, we'll have a 3 months payment holiday and we'll sort of catch our breath. And maybe a lot of them went into it thinking, well, we don't have to pay it back. The word holiday in itself is a break. So it's kind of like, oh, that's fine, we'll forget about it. So they probably haven't even put that money that they would have been spending aside and sort of saved it. So it's going to be really challenging, I think. And then, of course, that then impacts on the mental health. So.
And what do you think? What would you recommend companies actually do then, and how they would communicate really closely and better over the next few months with customers to kind of smooth that path for those customers that are in financial hardship?
I think the first and foremost thing that organisations need to be thinking about is actually their staff. The staff are crucial to bridging that gap with the customers, to building that relationship. So how they engage with and support their staff is going to be absolutely crucial to this next sort of 3 months, 6 months period. So it's sort of really supporting the people who are working from home. What do they need? How are they feeling? What resources do they need? Obviously, they've lost their immediate sort of support network. So a lot of organisations have open offices with call centres. So you've got somebody sat either side of you. If you've got a difficult conversation, you can just put them on hold and have that conversation with the people either side. Or you've got the water cooler conversations that you can have. Oh, I've got this customer, I don't know what to do. We've almost lost that support network. So it's making sure that people working from home have that support network. They can just ring somebody up and say, I've got this situation, I'm not quite sure, can I chat it over with you? That's absolutely crucial. Also, as well, if organisations have furloughed staff, how are they bringing them back into the work fold, into the family fold? Because there's going to be some anxiety around that, and making sure what do they need, how do they feel about coming back in, what have they missed as well? Because if the organisation has been carrying on, they're almost going to feel that actually I've missed sort of 2-3 months of my life, and I've missed that. Because a lot of people actually in this time have gelled. A lot of teams have really gelled over Zoom and Skype and MS Teams. it's been great. So you've had an inclination of what's going on in people's lives because you're in their front room, you're in their study, you're in their house with them.
Yeah.
So people who have been furloughed have missed that. So it's making sure that they still feel welcomed and part of the team. And then of course you've got the worries of people coming back into the office, you know, sort of starting to come out of lockdown. How do people feel about coming in to an office environment with communal areas? You know, how are you going to make that environment safe? How are you going to ensure that, you know, people feel that they're safe and well cared for? So it's all around that mental, emotional resilience as well. And it's about communication as well, communication with the customer. You know, sort of communicate with honesty. You know, think about your digital platform. I know that's something that you obviously, you know, that's what you're passionate about. So it's making sure, you know, that people can still get hold of you. They can still access the systems online. They can still access the systems by the telephone. Helping customers who aren't tech savvy, who aren't digital savvy, you know, to, you know, put out FAQs or put out you know, sort of guides on actually how you can access our system online. You know, we want to support you. You know, educate the customer on how you want them to access your services. That's
I mean,
crucial.
That's obviously important for all groups of customers, but probably even more
Yes.
so with vulnerable customers, you know, just to give them those additional communications channels to be able to get in touch. I mean, we you know, we've seen instances where you know, a large insurance company were only able to answer 25% of their calls that were coming in, and you know, at the start of lockdown, and with 75% of calls going unanswered, you know, just opening up those extra channels to be able to support people much better. I mean, you talked about digital education schemes, so I know Barclays have their Digital Eagles scheme, don't they, which kind of handles the educating people about how to use digital tech. I think that's been quite successful and quite popular, hasn't it?
And sort of, I mean, I was just saying in the meeting pre to this, you know, I sent out a diary invite today with a Zoom link, and it got sent to all the attendees 9 times. It's, you know, sort of, you know, technology is challenging at the best of times, and then you add vulnerability into the mix, and if it's not doing what you expect it to do, then it can be quite sort of, you know, disruptive, or you know, it can add additional emotions to how you're already feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Have you got any insight on which communications channels work best for vulnerable customers, or which channels companies that you work with seem to have most success on?
I think it's the organisations that have the most channels available, because everybody is different and everybody has a preferred channel. So, you know, you get an older population, they still do like to engage with people over the telephone. They like to have that human interaction, just to sort of say, okay, so I now know that you're taking that task on and I don't have to worry. Whereas there's a lot of, it's building that trust in older people in technology. A lot of people don't like online banking, telephone banking. It's, you know, well, what are they going to do with my money? Is it safe? You know, all of these things. So it's having a wide variety of channels. And asking the customer that, you know, how do you want us to communicate with you? What's your preferred communication channel? You know, do you prefer web chat? Do you prefer that we text you, MSM you? You know, all of those things. So as many possible channels as you want. And I think as well, it's thinking about the written content as well. So going back to those payment arrear letters, is how that tone of voice comes across in that letter. You know, it's sort of wanting the customer to engage with you, to actually start that conversation of how we can, you know, get this payment plan set up. You know, how much can you afford to pay each week, each month? You know, sort of get that tone of voice right that encourages the customer to contact you, to talk it through. You get it wrong and it completely loses all engagement.
Definitely. And we've had some comments actually on the chat that kind of, you know, go hand in hand with that. So we've had Kimberly Boone, who said that she doesn't usually phrase payment holiday, as it doesn't always sound quite right. So payment break seems to be the more you know, easily explainable phrase.
And I think if I wanted policy change out of this, I would like that phrase changed completely. I think it's very misleading.
Definitely. We've also had another comment from Martin Lines. So payment holidays need to go hand in hand with offering kind of budget planning tools for people as well. And would you agree that that's a good idea?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And encouraging people to talk about their finances as well, because I think a lot of people know that they're spending too much, that their expenditure is greater than their income. So they know deep down, but actually once they say it out loud, or once they start looking at the figures, it then makes it real. So it's starting to help people talk about their financial situation, and and we're all in it. We all do spend sometimes, a little bit more than we earn, and not making people feel bad about that, but helping them to reach out. There's so many good charities out there. You've got Step Change, you've got the Money Advice Trust, so many good resources out there. So just encouraging people, signposting people to get the support they need.
Yeah, and do you know any? Do you have much conversation with those types of charities? Do you know whether they've seen a major influx in queries and things? I would imagine they have.
Step Change had a serious increase in people accessing their services, which is fantastic. It's great that people are seeing that there are organisations out there that can help.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we're hoping to get them on an episode.
Brilliant! That would be fantastic.
So we're gonna take some questions now. We've got a few minutes left. Sarah, do you want to just come on screen and just share some of those questions for Helen?
Yeah, no problem at all. So we've had Jill Hendry from Electricity Northwest, and this is her question. So we have a dedicated welfare team who advise that they have seen a real change in the mood of the customer, and the majority appear unhappy and down compared to before COVID. How would Helen suggest we adapt to provide the support required today?
I think it is the skills and the tone of voice of the member of staff who's engaging with them. So my real bugbear with organisations, especially call centres, is companies who have timed calls, so that the member of staff just has like 3 or 4 minutes to engage with that customer, and then has to sort of write up their notes and wrap up and move on to the next call. Get rid of those completely, and just start that conversation. Allow that customer time to fully express what they're going through, what support they need, and help them achieve what they're looking to achieve. They've obviously contacted you for a reason, that they have a desired outcome. Really get to the bottom of how you can support them. I know we're not trained counsellors, but sometimes you are having those types of conversations where somebody just opens up and maybe tells you something that you weren't prepared for. Giving the staff the skills to actually have those emotionally challenging conversations, especially if they've just received a payment arrears letter that's sort of saying demanding a huge amount of money. The chances are that mentally they cannot process that, and then they just feel overwhelmed and actually just might turn around and say, I can't cope with this letter, I don't know what to do, might as well end my life, and these are some of the conversations that call centre staff are having. So it's given them the emotional resilience and the skills and the tone of voice, the words and phrases to spend time with that customer and help them through this time.
And those types of I was just going to say, those types of calls obviously can be very difficult when people are working from home now and having to deal with those types of distressing calls in their own home. Obviously that's a challenge.
Yes. Especially with Electricity Northwest, I think Jill was trying to highlight that a lot of people who are calling them are, they've got power cuts. So, it's a real serious situation. Yeah. So I think the empathy is so important on that call. And if they feel like they're being rushed or not listened to, then I think that's not,
And we have to bear in mind that the emotions are so much higher now. We're very much living emotionally led now. And sometimes all ration goes out the window. When you are so emotionally connected to your environment, if you want to, if there is a power cut, people are working from home, the internet's gone down, you may have medication in the fridge, you may have a television, you have an autistic child who may rely on the television to keep them, content and happy. So it's trying to connect with them on an emotional level and understand where they're at.
That's great, thank you. If we've got time for one more question, Sarah.
Yeah, I think so. I really hope that answered your question, Jill, but we'll be sending out Helen's details if you do want to contact her directly at all. Claire Shaw, so she says, hi, have you witnessed any good practice from companies that are proactively identifying vulnerable customers using existing manager information, for example?
Yes, I mean, it was great that sort of a lot of the supermarkets got in touch sort of with their vulnerable customers that had already identified and put them as a priority for delivery and that sort of thing. A lot of the utilities are getting in touch with the PSR list, sort of really making sure they're contacting them. I think they're even contacting them regularly as well. It wasn't just once at the beginning. I think they are staying in regular contact with them. You know, how have your needs changed? So there are a lot of companies who are getting it right, and that will help them with their reputation and their sort of growth coming out of this. And then there's a lot of companies who have got it wrong. And we see those on the news, don't we? So yeah, it's those companies who are putting themselves in the customer's point of view, customer's shoes, and actually, you know, what do I need as from my organisation now? If I was a customer, what, you know, how do I want them to engage with me? What do I need from them? So it's a real growth mindset, you know, and that's what's great, and a lot of innovative and creative ideas as well of getting around the problem and solving problems.
I think that's definitely that's the thing that's going to set companies apart and help them to thrive, not survive, isn't it? And you know, those that have got that growth mindset, that are willing to transform digitally and otherwise, just to, you know,
and the needs are going to be changing as well. Sort of, you know, the needs have changed now from they were 2 months ago. Customers' needs, individuals' needs. So it's organisations continually adapting, not just sort of this is the new norm. We're continually adapting and evolving and listening to the customer. You know, what do you need from us to help you achieve what you need to achieve?
Yeah, that's great, thank you. I'm conscious we're a couple of minutes over time now. I hope, no, that's absolutely fine. It's so interesting, such an interesting topic. So I hope that's answered everybody's questions. If not, we will, like Sarah said, we can send Helen's details around, and people can contact her direct if they've got any other questions, or they can find you on social media, on LinkedIn, can't they, Helen?
Yes.
So thank you so much for everybody who joined us today. It is our first webinar in this format, so we're really excited that I think we had 30 people join us. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to our guest Helen. Such an interesting conversation. We could probably talk for hours and hours and hours about this topic, and maybe we will get you on in a few months' time, and I'm sure the situation will have changed drastically then as well, so we can get your viewpoint and your take on that in a few months' time. But thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be sending the recording around shortly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.